So let's maybe start with, given the topic is on hybrid IT, probably a good place to start is let's come to a common definition of what hybrid IT is. And I'm not going to get into philosophical debates as to what's hybrid IT, our definition versus somebody else's definition. Main thing is just so we all kind of know what we're talking about here. So in essence, hybrid IT, as illustrated here, is essentially an IT organization that's providing services to their users that could, be coming from IT's own data center, whether it's traditional IT assets that have been service enabled, or whether it's, something that is a private cloud. We're not going to try to draw the distinction here. And then externally aggregating services from public services providers or public cloud providers, and that could include software as a service or other types of application services, infrastructure services, and really anything else. And you could expand this to include, business process outsourcing and things like that. So essentially, it's more of a services-based model. It's not really something that's all that different from what we've been talking about for years and years in the industry. I mean, I think Gartner coined the term real-time IT back around 2000 or so. We talk about cloud-based IT, but really, kind of the key drivers here are it's number one, around increasing IT's ability to be more agile and flexible in terms of meeting the ongoing needs of the businesses, the business customers that they serve. It's certainly the hybrid flavor, hybrid aspect comes into sort of recognizing the reality that we are now talking about a situation where, as opposed to in the past where maybe IT dealt primarily with a handful of large IT providers. It's now much more fragmented, and it's a lot of different specialist providers who are delivering value in a number of different ways, whether it's on-prem, whether it's increasingly over the internet. And certainly hybrid IT reflects the reality of what IT budgets have looked like in the ongoing trend, which is to do more with less. So more of the spending is weighted more heavily to the OpEx side of things. There's less, money for CapEx, and as a result, vendors have tended to respond in kind by, driving more of a services type of delivery model around, in addition or in replacement of the, the traditional IT types of offerings that they had. So how it works, now that we've kind of come to a common definition, how it works is essentially, IT acts as an aggregator of these different services, provides a single point of delivery, support, single throat to choke. So essentially IT is the go-to organization within the company or within the government agency, whatever the case may be, to source all IT needs, even if ultimately those IT solutions are being provided by an external provider. Why now? It's a number of different things, but essentially, when you think about it, hybrid IT, the basic model here, we've been talking about it for quite some time. We've been talking about the notion of service catalogs and things like that, and to a great extent, that's kind of the basis for IT services management. So really, hybrid IT is an extension, a natural evolution of that, accelerated by cloud types of capabilities. And so really, cloud has had a big impact on this thinking, and not so much from the technology aspects of cloud. I mean, from a technology standpoint, a lot of cloud technologies, or at least the basic premise, have been around for a long time, think timeshare. But it's more of the business models, IT applying the business models of cloud services delivery, lifecycle management, to quote-unquote cloud enable how they deliver value within the organization. So what are the different types of hybrid IT business models? Well, generally they're going to be some combination of all of the different service delivery approaches, which we'll start with. So it may well be, okay, where am I sourcing the different IT capabilities? And increasingly, IT is going to become kind of take on sort of a portfolio management type of capacity in terms of how you manage your service catalog, how you manage your different vendors, what you choose to develop internally, what you choose to source externally. And it's going to be dynamic. You're going to be, mixing and matching and swapping out vendors as time goes on. But, it might be a combination of, for example, okay, my CRM is provided by Salesforce, that's a SaaS type offering. But my financials, my finance and accounting system, which maybe as an IT organization I want to integrate to my Salesforce so I can do a quote to collect type of solution. But perhaps my finance and accounting service is running on-prem. Maybe it's Oracle Financials or whatever the case may be. But in terms of your users who are consuming, let's say the finance department or the sales department, they don't really have to know, they don't really have to care whether the service they're consuming is running on-prem or whether it's being sourced from an external provider. They have a common set of provisioning approaches, a common set of request approaches, a common set of support approaches in terms of how they interface with it. So, a lot of this kind of applies more to how are you going to service enable, some new software capability you're developing, whether it's a mobile app, whether it's a legacy piece of software that you want to, quote unquote, put more of a cloud delivery model in front of. And so you'll need to think about, okay, if it's a legacy application, okay, how do I kind of create an on-demand offering of that? Probably, that's where you're going to start thinking about, okay, I want to virtualize it. Okay, do I want to virtualize and run it on my own on-prem, VMware environment, or do I want to kind of move that to the new OpenStack environment that I'm slowly kind of pulling out of the lab? Or is it something where, from a cost-effectiveness standpoint, I want to put it on Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure? And so how you respond to each of those is not so much about what the technical capabilities are of each of those different ways in terms of how you can host your instance, but more around what your policies are. So, for example, we deal a lot with federal government agencies, and, a pretty common policy would be, as they're going through this thinking is, okay, if this legacy application that I want to virtualize, if I'm deciding between Amazon or Azure and in-house, I need to think as an agency, what are the policies around this application and the data that will be residing within the application. So if it's going to be confidential or greater, then perhaps my policy is that I want it running in-house or at a specialty provider, whereas if it's unclassified data, then I go with the lowest cost solution. Other elements that will come into there are uptime, SLAs, geography, and things like that. Very likely you're going to continue to offer up software that is simply downloaded to a desktop or increasingly to a mobile device. But oftentimes, and more increasingly, that software is going to have hooks into a back-end service. Whether it's some kind of local analytics package that has hooks back into some big data service or some risk analysis solution that's running on a point-of-sale device, on a mobile device, that ties back into a risk analysis cloud service. You're going to see combinations of things. And in fact, very much, nature of the hybrid aspect of hybrid IT is not just that you're going to have a mix of different types of applications, but that even the applications themselves may well have hybrid models in terms of how they are managed and delivered. The next aspect to think about is, okay, how am I going to account for the value that I as an IT organization am providing to my end user organization or to my end users within my company or my agency? And so, again, this goes, hand in glove with some of the considerations we just talked about. So, obviously, if it's a SaaS type application that you are sourcing from Salesforce, how you charge that back to your internal sales and marketing departments is probably going to be very similar to how you're doing the cost accounting of that from Salesforce. Although you may well add some overhead associated with, things you're doing. Perhaps you're amortizing, an integration that you did with your accounting system, or just for the front end help desk support that you're providing. Whereas if you've got, a service that you're offering up that is more based on resources consumed, perhaps it's storage, compute would be kind of the classic examples of this, but it could just be sort of like the traditional timeshare model. Those are going to tend to be more usage and consumption based. You may have cases where, okay, I've got some kind of, service, maybe it's a risk analysis service that I'm providing to, maybe you're an IT organization in a large bank or credit card processing company, and you've got a, big risk analysis solution that you've built out, and you want to enable this for a number of different internal user departments. There may be some initial training that's required for that. So, perhaps in terms of your chargeback or showback model, you want to include the amount of time that you need to, work with those individual departments to do training, to do setup, to do, maybe initial customization, et cetera. And then from that point on, charge on a usage or subscription type basis. If you're getting economies of scale as you get more and more users on it, then you'll likely want to pass on, your cost savings to your internal users. And certainly, if you're developing services that in turn your internal customer, whether it's marketing department or some line of business, is then exposing to their external customers, then you need to think about how your customer is going to bill for the value that is being provided through that. So you need to think about what are the different payment mechanisms that you need to support for this. And again, as we talked about with service delivery approaches, typically you're going to have all of these in one shape or fashion across your entire services portfolio. So as we kind of think through this, and we've talked about it from a kind of how it works and some of the major considerations from a business model perspective, what are the key areas of concern, key areas that need to be, thought about in terms of how you transform your organization, how you transform your processes? Because obviously, as you move to a hybrid IT business model, it sort of demands or necessitates that the business model of how your IT organization is going to need to adapt to fit this hybrid IT service delivery model. So what are some of the key concerns here? And this is a very interesting study that was done recently by IDC, where they interviewed hundreds of different IT executives in different parts of the world. And the main question here was, what do you see as the most important roles for the central IT organization going forward? And it's maybe a little bit difficult to read, but I'm going to kind of highlight the top 3 or 4 responses here. So 21% of them said the most important role for central IT is to protect sensitive data and manage business risk from internal IT and public cloud services, right? So it really speaks to, the concerns of, okay, as I add more and more providers, as more and more of these providers are coming from external sources, as my catalog of services becomes much more dynamic, changing over time, that naturally introduces more opportunities for risk. And so, I need to be able to scale up how I manage that risk, and in many cases automate it. So that's one of the key things that IT executives are thinking about. And we certainly hear a lot of that sort of topic when we're talking with IT organizations as well. The second key thing really speaks to kind of the wanting to make their internal IT operations and development arms much more agile, much more flexible in terms of meeting the evolving needs of internal users. So the response here is 17% said, hey, we see one of the most important roles is maintaining a centralized app, dev, test, QA, methodology, resources, staff. So it speaks to essentially how they're going to operate their operations side from a governance standpoint, from a value delivery standpoint, from a time to market standpoint, if you will, to, again, be more competitive, quite frankly, with, when LOBs are looking for a solution, recognizing that many times LOBs are, not a locked-in customer anymore, that they have choices. They can go out and procure and, in fact, have. And that's been the basis for the growth of shadow IT. The third one here, which is actually tied with the last one, is around spend management. So it's, we think the most important key thing for IT to provide in terms of value is optimizing IT spending across the organization and charge back to LOBs as appropriate. So, that's not only for the services that IT is directly providing to the LOBs, but also for the services that IT is supporting, but may be directly, acquired from an external provider. We talked, for example, about, Salesforce.com, right? That's an external provider, but IT is providing value in terms of, ideally a governance framework around that, potentially doing integrations with internal, finance and accounting type solutions, and then also providing that first line of support, right? So a lot of this is, how can we from an IT organization sort of deal with some of these nightmare scenarios that we're increasingly seeing in the news, where the CFO gets the bill for the Amazon Web Services and it's, gone up incredibly high. It raises big ruckus, and what turns out is there's a bunch of engineers, IT folks, business folks that have set up, their own personal instances on AWS. Many times just left them running, forgot they're on. A lot of the same issues that, we used to talk about years ago in terms of virtual sprawl with VMware farms. We're now seeing cloud sprawl with infrastructure services. And the fourth thing, which I'm going to come back to this towards the end of the presentation, is how can, the first three are around kind of transforming the IT organization. The fourth one is really around how can we, the IT organization, help our lines of businesses transform themselves. So what it says specifically is support the day-to-day operations of customer-facing and revenue-generating online services. And again, the kind of the key theme here is IT is going through a transformation itself, but the organizations within that they are within, that they support as their own customers, are also going through similar transformations around the services economy, and IT, by addressing those issues themselves, is in a good position to help the rest of the organization deal with that as well. So let's kind of put these different imperatives into three major buckets and talk about them in a little bit more detail. As we see it, there's really kind of the three pillars of hybrid IT management are, number one, how do I reduce the risk associated with this operating model to my organization, so around the governance, risk, compliance management. Number two is how can I, not only for the IT organization, but for the organization overall, how can I help optimize license management, spend management, both on the delivery side as well as on the cost side. And then from an IT operations management standpoint, how can I improve the flexibility, the agility, the cost effectiveness of my IT organization in terms of, being more customer focused in terms of providing, value to the organization that, cannot be sourced readily from an external provider or from some packaged software capability, right? So this might be developing custom maps, running services that are mission critical to the organization, those sorts of things. So some of the key tenets, I won't run through all of these, but with cloud governance or hybrid IT governance, generally key tenets of any good governance policy is, first of all, defining, communicating, and enforcing, different usage policies. So, this is becoming exceptionally important in terms of mitigating, concerns around shadow IT, right? This is something that comes up a lot in our conversations with enterprise organizations, as they say, hey, we have a shadow IT problem. Sometimes we hear it in that manner. Whereas the reality is, shadow IT is just simply, this is something that's been going on with decades. It's how generally innovation happens within an organization. So it's more of this situation, how do you deal with that from a governance standpoint? So, a lot of times you've got cloud sprawl because, for example, take a simple thing like document collaboration. Maybe you have one business, maybe the marketing department is using Box, to do document collaboration. Maybe you've got a group over in engineering, pockets in engineering that are using Dropbox. IT thinks everybody wants SharePoint, and so they're working on a SharePoint solution. And then a lot of other people are coming to IT saying, we need some kind of document collaboration solution, right? So one of the things that IT can do in that very simple example is to, as you see these pockets of innovation, right, to work with those different groups, figure out, okay, we don't need 5 different document collaboration solutions. What is the best one? Is it Box? Is it SharePoint? Maybe there's an argument for, for both of them, but certainly probably don't need 3, 4, or 5, right? So that's around kind of communicating policies so that when users need a document collaboration solution, they know what the official position is in terms of which ones they can get, which ones they can order, et cetera. Risk management, how do you deal with risk management? Well, I guess first you have to define what the risks are. So there's, risks of data leakage, there's risks of, things associated generally with that. But there's also risk in terms of not being compliant with regulatory requirements. So for example, you've got regulations like Sarbanes-Oxley, and it used to be that the common approach that IT organizations would take in trying to achieve compliance with Sarbanes-Oxley, which has a requirement that you've got to be accountable for where your data is going and who has access to it. There used to be, the attempt to be compliant with that would be, setting a policy that says to their employees, thou shalt not let sensitive data outside the firewall. Well, that doesn't work in today's world, right? Obviously, start with your customers. Obviously, if you're using Salesforce right there, you violated your own tenet in that you've got, customers that, customer names, customer information that is sitting outside of your firewall. So the realities of the world, and in fact, Sarbanes-Oxley does not dictate a technology approach. All it says is you need to be accountable for your data and what users have access to it. So you want to know, what users within your organization are provisioned to which services, and you want to be able to monitor, that they are, continuing to use it, so that when you need to do the Sarbanes-Oxley audit report, you can run a report that shows, here's all the users that have access to this application. Here are all the users that have access to that application. So, and then finally, another thing to I'll move on to spend management, but some of this kind of goes into governance in terms of a vendor management standpoint, is you want to be able to get a better handle in terms of what your budget should be based on, forecasted demand. You want to have a better feel for what the forecasted demand is going to be based on what current usage patterns tend to be. So again, the ability to, track and audit things from, that help you on the governance standpoint also help you from a spend management standpoint. So one thing I didn't mention on the governance standpoint is, simple things like single sign-on, right? It's great convenience to end users, but more importantly, from a governance standpoint, provides you an auditable record of who accessed what application or what service at what point in time, right? Because you've got those login audits. Well, that same type of capability also makes it easier for you to do license optimization because, if you've got, say, 100 seats of Salesforce that you've procured, in terms of a bucket of licenses, and you've got the 99th sales employee about to join the company, you need to think about, okay, do I need to order more licenses, or can I run an audit of who has accessed Salesforce over the last month and determine, oh gosh, I've got 10 people that have never logged in to Salesforce. Maybe I can recapture those unused licenses so I don't have to spend more on buying another batch of licenses. That's one simple example of many in terms of how, kind of this common reporting layer, this common auditing layer can help you not only with governance, but also with spend management as well. And then finally, from an operations management standpoint, again, this is around how can I be more flexible, how can I be more agile, and this goes part and parcel with the other things we've talked about here, which is it's going to require, clear governance in terms of what are the available infrastructure services that I can develop on, what application types, categories can go, where do I, have any requirements in terms of geolocation, restrictions, what is that common dev test methodology, resources, very simple thing. Okay, so maybe you have a pool of developers where, there's like 2 or 3 different types of compute instances that they need, for their standard development process, and they're constantly, needing to turn one on and then turn one off after they've done whatever they're doing from a dev standpoint. If every time they do that, they have to manually go in and set up those instances, that's not a very efficient model. So if you, however, have a service catalog where you can define common templates, these are the 3 different versions of the development template for this particular application, great. Then your developer can go in there and they can say, yeah, I need, version B of that template. Go ahead and, they go ahead and order that. It gets spun up, whether it's on VMware, OpenStack, or Azure, or AWS is, can be determined in terms of what the policy is around that template. So, we've kind of covered, so far we've talked about what are the different business model elements from a pricing and cost accounting standpoint. We've talked about what are some of the key, areas of concern in terms of imperatives, governance, spend management, operations, efficiency, being kind of the 3 major buckets that we created here. Now the natural question is, how do I do this, right? Now, how you do it has both a process answer in terms of how your organization is going to be structured, and also, of course, a technology element in terms of how you're going to provide the capability to, provide a unified ability to, manage the delivery of lots of different services from lots of different providers, including yourselves, as well as how you do the lifecycle management of your users across all of those different services over time. And so what Gartner, Forrester, really all the major analysts have been talking about for the past few years is that, IT organizations are increasingly going to become cloud providers themselves, right? So putting a, traditional cloud delivery, self-service, fulfillment type model on top of traditional IT services, but also aggregating or brokering, services from third parties. So kind of get out of this shadow IT dilemma that we're in now, where it's sort of LLBs are going off on their own, they're left to their own devices in terms of, kind of picking different SaaS providers and sort of going it alone in terms of, not really being under the standard governance framework, to really kind of bringing that under the governance IT umbrella, which is really one of the key things IT has traditionally provided on behalf of the organization, is technology governance, and enabling this to be, this innovation to happen and by the LOBs in a manner where it's not causing undue risk to the organization. So anyway, this is what Gartner and others refer to as IT becoming a service broker, variably a cloud service broker within their organization, where they're providing cloud services and aggregating cloud services. Naturally, we have a platform that provides this kind of capability. I'm not going to go through the details because in a minute here, Bob is going to show you a quick demo. But in essence, you'll see some of the major capabilities are a service catalog where you can present the different services. You can define policies in terms of, which departments, which organizational units should be able to view which types of services when they view the catalog. Set up policies around, roles-based access control, in terms of who can have access to what, how you do your cost accounting, chargeback model, through a unified billing engine. And also, so you kind of break it into the services delivery aspects as well as the services management aspects, which is more around how you manage infrastructure services, whether these are running out of your own data center or being sourced from third-party providers such as Azure and or Amazon Web Services. So one quick case study, and then I'll turn it over to Bob just to maybe kind of help you conceptualize this. So this is this particular customer is a automotive parts manufacturer. They sell, produce and sell parts. I can't go into detail on it, but essentially 90% of all new automobiles purchased or sold around the world have some elements of this company's products. And if you're a gearhead like me and you like to, work on your car and go to O'Reilly's or other auto parts stores, you have bought a lot of their aftermarket products. So kind of a traditional multinational manufacturing company. And the issue, that they came to us with was, listen, we've got a shadow IT / cloud sprawl issue, and we're worried about the governance, aspects of that. Now, we want to do all these other things too in terms of we want to become more agile in terms of our, operations organization. We want to get a better handle on spend management. We want to be able to consolidate demand for, things like document collaboration across the entire enterprise versus letting LOBs go on their own to do it. So, we want to impart this broker model. So we kind of broke this into two parts. The first thing we did is, before we even got into the technology aspects, we did a workshop with them where, we spent several days at their headquarters with their IT team, essentially talking about what the process flows are for governance and, what are the different roles, service owners, broker roles, the idea of a cloud governance board, stuff like that. And then once we got kind of defined that operating process, then we got into the technology, and currently they're running a very large-scale pilot where they are, actually in sort of phase one of rolling out their own internal cloud service broker type of model. So again, just an example of kind of a real-life scenario, an increasingly common scenario that we're seeing. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Bob. And while Bob is setting up here, I'll just kind of caution you that normally doing a demo of our platform is something that generally will take an hour to an hour and a half to really do a drill down. Bob's going to try to squeeze that into 15 or 20 minutes. So you're not going to see anything. You're not going to see everything that we normally show. But.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So I have about 15 minutes, it looks like here. I'm going to do as much as I can. I should be able to touch on probably 6 of the key points that Steve had mentioned around enabling hybrid IT. First thing I want to talk about is having a catalog. It's important when managing hybrid IT not to have multiple catalogs or multiple places for your end users to be going to. You really want to have one. So that one catalog has to support all of the services and the products that you're offering. Could be your own internal infrastructure as a service, or public cloud services like Amazon or Azure, as well as any SaaS offerings like Salesforce or Box, but also more traditional IT and more of the bimodal IT vein for things like maybe your own ERP system, or even some hardware products that you might be offering. And so your catalog, and another thing, if you started down the path here and you already have some catalogs, or maybe you have one catalog, you've done the work to integrate everything into one catalog, any new systems you bring on need to be able to integrate into that, right? So that you maintain that value of having just one catalog. So whether you have a standalone single catalog system already, or if you're creating one from scratch or getting one brand new, you want that to support all of the different products and services that your tribe offers as IT. So you want it to have things like, Box, as I mentioned, software as a service for Box or Salesforce. You also want it to have that infrastructure as a service. Maybe it's public infrastructure like Azure, and more advanced infrastructure as a service like elastic compute, things like running on Amazon or OpenStack. Any of the different cloud providers that you have. You might have your own private OpenStack, or that might be public as well. Additionally, here you see an example of a terminal, whether it's a point-of-sale terminal that you want to have a branch office buy or lease. That's something that you want the catalog to be able to support, etc. There could be other things too. You might have bundles of items where you have multiple products that are available. Could be a couple of software as a service offerings that come together, or maybe software with a hardware bundle, that sort of thing. You want that supported. You'll also want, of course, to be able to handle any of the billing models of that, and as we'll go through, you'll see that. Now, if you have a lot of products, you want to be able to, obviously allow your employees to search for them or look at the different categories. Maybe, if you have many different products, you'll want to see them grouped in by category, maybe even by provider. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at, the process of actually, as an end user, going and procuring a service, maybe requesting it from an admin who's going to approve it. And along the way, we're also going to be talking about some budgeting functionality, because that's going to be important too in terms of chargeback to LOBs. So let's look at some of these services in here. Maybe we have, like McAfee SaaS endpoint protection is something that you might have. You want to be able to drill in, get more information about the product, that sort of thing, see the price, maybe add to the cart, or or other products in here, right? There's different things. Let's go ahead and take a look at Averware. Here's an example of one. Again, looking at more details, the information you want. You want to be able to catalog this and provide information, whether it's text like this, or links, or graphics, or videos, those sorts of things. Your catalog needs to be able to support that, like Jamcracker does. Okay. So let's go ahead and add this one to the cart. Let's go ahead and purchase this, or at least make a request to purchase it. And here's where you're going to be able to see the different types of billing models, whether it's just a chargeback fee, could be a monthly fee or a one-time charge, setup charges, whatever it is. You want to be able to see those items itemized, those costs itemized and shown. Maybe you want to buy multiple things at once or request once. So, classic shopping cart that allows you to continue shopping or adjust quantities is important. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and proceed here. And since we're really talking about, internal IT, there's no concept of, using a credit card really. It's all about using budgeting. And so you want to do something like, use a budget code. Pick one of the budget codes that you have. Now, these budgets could be broken up any number of ways, and so your platform needs to, support the flexibility you have, whether it be per project, based on the department, or any combination of those items. You want to be able to have flexible budgeting so that, your business requirements are not hampered by the technology choices you made. So in this case, let's go ahead and pick. Let's pick one that I know is actually running out of budget, because I want to show you some functionality that's also pretty important. So I'll pick this marketing budget. It's not like marketing ever goes over budget or anything, right, Steve? But I'll go ahead and proceed here. And, when I'm making this purchase, oh, look at that. I'm advised that I've exceeded the budget.
Dang it.
Now, you don't want to be a painful IT organization and be a gate for everything and slow things down. And so it's probably smart just to allow your end users to at least be advised that they're going over the budget and allow them to proceed. If you want to put some other controls in there requiring extra approvals, that's something that the platform should support. And so you should be able to define those rules as well. Okay. So there you see I've made that purchase, or I've requested it. Now, you'll normally, like I mentioned, want to have a service request sort of model where the admin would come in. Now, since I am admin, I can see everything here, so I can demo this pretty quickly. So I'm coming to manage requests. It's something that I would have received an email on notifying me that there's a request been made. You bring me into the screen here, look at this product with the approvals pending, get information about it, who's trying to purchase it, et cetera, what's it cost, and I can either approve it or reject it. In this case, I'll approve it. But, as an admin, it's also important that I see information about the budget status, and there you go. We see the notification here as well.
So, Bob, do you have to do this for every service request? It seems like you'd be spending all your time just approving requests.
Well,
or can you automate it?
It could be automated, and you could have rules defined where only if the budget is being exceeded, you require approval, or based on some user parameters. There's various ways to do it. You don't have to, to gate every request, but, it is important to make sure that you're providing some level of governance over this. So having somebody make these, manage these requests makes sense. Now, having one platform to make the request, to approve the request, and to access all the services makes it simpler instead of having to go to 10 different systems and do swivel chair integration and get approvals and all that. Having it all in one really makes the process a lot faster. Okay. So there you see I've gone and made the request, and I've gone and approved it so that now the user is able to go into the dashboard, and after the admin might assign that license off to the user, they would be able to go and log into that service. Okay. Now, before I move into the next thing about single sign-on and the importance there, I do want to talk about the importance of not only having all the catalog items here and catalogs that excuse me, items that are important for the users, but you're going to have different groups that really don't need to see all the catalog items. So you want to have some control over that, right? You don't necessarily want to show your engineers Salesforce and show your engineers various development tool services that might be available, like some platform as a service. And so here, your platform is really going to need to provide some catalog management. So by being able to define the applications of the services per department or per some organizational unit, you're going to be able to filter out the things that are just noise to users. As an example, let me show you. I have in another browser, I've signed in as a user called Jim George. He's an IT ops. He's more of an IT guy. These are the 5 services that he currently sees. But maybe we want to go and add something to that or remove it, whatever. As the admin, I can come in, knowing that Jim is part of the contractor department. I come in and view the details and actually modify the products that are being offered. Maybe IT Ops doesn't need Salesforce, but they do need maybe that elasticity stack or some other features. So on the left-hand side here, we have the list of products that are potentially in the catalog, and on the right-hand side, you see what has been selected for that user. Maybe we'll add a SharePoint. So if I come in, save and finish, I've now gone and very quickly changed the apps. I've added and deleted some, so that now the contractor should have 6 applications available to them in the catalog. If I switch back to that user who's in the contractor group, and I click on catalog, we'll now see that there are 6 items, and they have changed a bit with elasticity coming in, as well as SharePoint and Exchange. So providing that catalog management is important. Really letting people, especially if you have a lot of services you want to be offering, letting them focus in on what they should be seeing and not get distracted by other services that are really not appropriate for them.
So you can do that on an individual basis, but also on a departmental basis in terms of your policies, right?
Yeah, it usually makes sense to do it more in a group level, especially if you're a large enterprise. You don't want to be defining custom catalogs from one of your 1,000 users.
Yeah.
So at a department level or some other organization level, it makes more sense.
Okay, which I guess IT folks are used to, because that's similar to, like, if they use Active Directory, they might be kind of going through that, already.
That's exactly right. In Active Directory, you have various groups to use, whether they be security groups or permissions groups. And actually, that's a really good segue, because, part of the solution here is providing some sort of single sign-on and user management for that. So whether you have an Active Directory, which most large enterprises do, but not all, they might use other directory services, other LDAP-based services, and they might have already a single sign-on system, maybe something from Okta or whatever, where that users are able to single sign on and don't have to try to remember or write down their credentials and passwords, creating a real security risk for all of those different applications they might be using. So single sign-on really brings a lot of value to the organization in terms of governance and risk reduction. And so if you look here as a user, I have some subscriptions myself, and I should be able to go and single sign on into things like Box, as an example. So here you see just by a single click from within the Jamcracker platform, I'm able to go and single sign on into any services that have been purchased and assigned to me. Now, not everybody wants to, I'll admit that it's not necessarily ideal that everybody has to come into Jamcracker to then single sign on into those services. And via various integration methods with Active Directory Federation services, for example.
SAML or anything like that, right?
Anything SAML-based, really. Our platform can act as both a service provider and an identity provider, including methods of chaining so that users can just access the bookmarks that they're used to doing, and it will single sign them on, but it will actually pass the request through the Jamcracker platform so that Jamcracker is made aware of the accesses for later on doing your auditing and understanding who's using what to help you govern the usage of the licenses that you have.
I guess from a user management standpoint, the fact that we're integrated with, we can integrate with an on-prem Active Directory or with their Azure Active Directory means you don't have to be managing users in two different areas. You just manage it in your directory like you always do, and we pick it up. Right?
That's the key point. You want the teams who already are using tools to keep using those tools. You don't want to have to change it for everybody, right? So Active Directory manages all the users in the platform or in the organization. When somebody joins the company, an Active Directory user account is created, they're added to certain groups. That's the way IT wants to do it. You don't want to change it for them. And our platform does integrate into that so that those same processes are in place. You can define the roles and the departments within Active Directory that then flow down into the Jamcracker platform, giving users the privileges and authorization to access the different services and all the functions of the Jamcracker platform. Okay. Very good. That's a great point. Now, along the way, I showed you that user experience for budgeting, right? You specify the budget when you're trying to make the request, and the admin is also, who's approving the request, also sees that and is alerted to any of those budgets that might have been exceeded. And the budgeting really, you need to be able to manage that easily. So whether you already have a budgeting system, your platform would need to maybe integrate into that so that, you're still within a single platform, within a single place where you're ordering the services, you can still get information about those budgets that are available and how much has been used. But if you don't already have that, but it's something that you would want, our platform provides that out of the box as well, so you could do things like, view the utilization against the budgets that have occurred. So as an example here, for the month of December, I have these budget codes active, and I could see what has been assigned and what has actually been used for each of those budgets. And look, see, there you go. Marketing was allocated 100, and they used 244.
That looks about right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, having a showback report, being able to track it all in one spot is really important functionality, and instead of having to do all sorts of dances with financial software trying to have to determine that. Now, you'll also want to be able to define those budgets, right, and add them into the system. If you're doing it standalone, then we have a simple utility here just to use an Excel file where you define the time frame, the budget code, the description, the allocated amounts, and any threshold points where alerts would be generated if you're coming near to exceeding the budgetary threshold. So just by making modifications to this and uploading that, you then have those budgets appearing when users are selecting and admins are approving that budget. So that's budget and spend management really go together here. It's all about at the order time, as well as from an ongoing financial management, being able to track those in one place very easily, as opposed to having to jump across to 15 different systems to try to see what your spend is. So from an operations manager perspective, you got to think of, when you talk about cloud services, you think about it in two ways. You have sort of subscription management for software as a service offerings. So here's where you see what subscriptions you have, what you've purchased, and are being used. So if you have somebody coming in and they're going to need this Adverware product, good, I know I have 2 licenses available, I'm okay there. But like Steve had mentioned earlier, if you purchased 100 and you're already at 99 and you're bringing on a few salespeople, you're probably going to want to go and add a few more licenses, get ahead of that, because sometimes that procurement can take a long time with the vendor. But, it's really important to be able to manage that here so you can assign things off to users, unsubscribe totally, etc. Here's where you get into operations management for all of your SaaS offerings in one screen. Okay? From an infrastructure as a service perspective, there's various functionalities you want there. Now, in addition to just being able to order infrastructure as a service, I'm running a little low on time, so I can't really show you too much here, but you could do things like order stacks, right? And order stacks that could be elastic, that can scale up or scale out, on multiple clouds, etc. You want that in the catalog, but then you'll also want to operationally manage it, right? So you might look at the console. You want to say, okay, what are the cloud resources being used? What's our spend? What's the most common items? Get a good dashboard view into things like what's the most common usage, and get usage data from each of the services that each of the cloud providers that you have. You might also want to go and look at the instances that are currently running and perform, life cycle management on them. So as you can see on this dashboard, I have a couple of instances running. I can come and stop, terminate, reboot. That's your basic life cycle management on this VM. And you'll see here I have OpenStack, I have Amazon, I have Azure. I have them all on one screen. Amazon has dozens and dozens of services. And if you need and want to use those advanced services, there aren't any parallels for a lot of these services. As you see, I'm just single signing on right into the Amazon console from within our platform. Azure doesn't offer all of these, most of these. Each of the cloud providers are going to have their own set, with Amazon obviously, I think, being the richest set here. So if you are going to need those, you still need easy access into them, and you can still use those using our platform. And really, any of the billing, any of the charges that you incur for using these services will get pulled into our platform thanks to the API integration that we have, and provided back in chargeback and budgeting reports. Now, having that vendor console access for whatever cloud providers you want to offer that to really gives you the ability to take advantage of all of the services. But for the most part, most of the time, you're going to want a simpler interface for most of these to just come in and be able to do the common things like that lifecycle management, or launching a secure shell session. Say that 10 times fast. into the virtual machines to get information about that, such as that I did there. Look at the volumes. Maybe I have attached some volumes. Maybe I want to attach a new one or attach other existing volumes. Maybe I have some data, some test data, some binaries on some volumes that I want to attach. You want that sort of operations management for your virtual machines. Maybe you want to resize it. Maybe this machine, you're going to be getting some increased usage, and you want to manually do it ahead of time. Or, if you knew that it was maybe something from a retail point of view, if you're a retail company, you want to set this up on an elasticity stack, you want the flexibility to do that as well. And so, having common functions that you're going to need a lot of the time within infrastructure as a service is very important. You want image management, you want to manage security groups or firewall rules, maybe showing some monitoring functionality, monitoring specific VMs, production VMs that you have going, and you want to look at any alarms that are occurring and be able to manage that. Those are also important. I know I've run out of time, but I just wanted to show one more thing here. All of this is important to provide within the context of role-based access control. Every user should be assigned a role that determines what functions they can see in the platform. You don't really necessarily want finance people to be able to come in and view and manage instances, or regular salespeople come in and view invoices and payments for the cloud for the different cloud and services that you're offering. And so you want to be able to come in and edit some of the different roles, maybe add additional roles or edit ones that occur, and adjust the permissions so that for any of those roles, you then have a granular permission set helping to control what those users in that role can actually work with. And this needs to work across the organization so that every user is assigned some sort of a role, like a default role of end user, or other roles that give them more functionality appropriate for their function from the organization. So just to recap, I've run out of time here. Catalog management, being able to manage that by group per function, having that integrated with budgeting and approval processes for that, single sign-on, operations management for both software as a service and infrastructure as a service, and having that all being affected and your access to the platform governed by role-based access control, I think are all some of the main points of really enabling a hybrid IT and bimodal IT effectively. So with that, that's it for me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bob. And, you know, we always run the risk, and I think we've probably done that here in terms of trying to shove 20 pounds of information in a 10-pound sack, but I think you did a great job showing a lot in a little bit of time. But obviously there's a lot more that we weren't able to show. So if you have an interest in kind of drilling down and in having a more of a relaxed conversation with us about the platform demo, we'd be happy to do that. So just, I'm not going to do any kind of sales pitch or chest thumping here, other than just to say that we hope you got the sense that this is something that we've been involved in and have put a lot of deep thinking around, because we have been focused on this type of issue scenario since our founding back in 1999. Now it's been called different things, at different times: cloud, application service provider, hybrid IT, real-time IT, whatever the case, and we've kind of weathered all those different marketing terms. But I think what has stayed consistent is the things that we've been focused on in terms of providing platform and the knowledge base around how do you set up a model where you can aggregate third-party services as well as cloud enable your own existing services and provide unified delivery and unified lifecycle management of those services to your users. So that's what we're about, and we've done it for lots of different companies, some of which are shown here. So really what we've talked about in this webinar has been kind of hopefully provoking some thinking on your part in terms of your journey, that maybe will help your journey towards hybrid IT. Want to stress again that as much as we love to talk about technology and love to play with technology, technology is just one element of it. It's also important to think about how this impacts your organization. We'd be happy to work with you across both fronts. We've, as I've alluded to, not only can we provide you the platform, but we can also provide you the knowledge base to help you transform your IT organization towards more of a hybrid IT model. And I think in the process of doing that, you'll find that you'll be in a much better position to help the overall organization in terms of making their business transformation to more of a services-based type of economy. So with that, we've got a lot of questions here. I'm just going to try to squeeze in a few here, if you bear with me, Tony. First couple are a couple of housekeeping ones, but I think important. Number one, will there be recording? Yes, there will. We'll send that out in the next few days. Next one, we've had a couple folks ask for a copy of the slides. We'll go ahead and email those to you. If others of you would also like a copy of the slides, you can send us an email at information@jamcracker.com. A couple other things. Good question. We didn't even talk about this. What are the different options I have in deploying a hybrid IT cloud service broker type of platform? So maybe I'll take that, and then Bob, add in if you have any other thoughts. Great question. You can do this. In fact, we support it however you want to do it, basically. But we can offer it as essentially a SaaS type service. We can offer it as a managed service. And if you want to run this on-prem, we can do that. Generally, what we find with our customers, it's some combination of all of that, maybe at different times, almost kind of a build, operate, transfer.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Oftentimes, just to get started, I want to start with either a hosted or a SaaS model. Maybe they're not comfortable with SaaS because there's a lot of important data in here. So a hosted model that we can run, turn up, and manage for you. And then later on, as you get better trained, you're more comfortable with it, you can take over the management of that or even bring it in-house. Either way.
Okay. And then one other question that I'll address here, the rest will follow up with you on email individually. But since we are a multinational company, we have business units that own in different countries, many of whom run their own IT. We want to move more towards the shared services model. how do we support different languages, needs, things like that.
That's really important, and that's, can be really difficult, especially if you're trying to build your own. Having a platform that already has that globalization built in for different currencies, time zones, different languages, and giving users the option of picking the language that they want. In Canada, for instance, it could be French or English. In Belgium, it could be different languages, etc. You really need a platform that can handle that globalization. So you're not repeating the same thing over and over in different locations.
Great. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. So Tony, back over to you.